Hello and welcome to our First Generation to United States Undergraduate Admission Night here at Stevenson High School. This is the senior only session, and my name is Jennifer Falk, one of the school counselors here at Stevenson. We are hopeful that tonight's items will be helpful as you start your post-secondary journey. We'll talk about alternative opportunities after high school, and then we'll talk about resources that we have here in preparation for applying to post-secondary institutions. We'll talk about applications, where to find them and how to submit them, transcripts, how to find them, and the ways in which you can send them to the schools that you need to send them to. We'll talk about recommendation letters, who you should ask, and when. We'll talk about essays, and we'll give you a few tips on writing good essays. Test scores, how important are they? Test optional, should you choose to send your test scores, when and why? And then we'll talk about our deadlines. We'll also talk a little bit about financial aid, and we'll finish up with some advice and support resources for help with the larger application process. So one opportunity after high school is the U.S. Armed Forces, and there are many ways to serve. And without going into too much detail, because we do have a military week coming up, the week of 11/6, if you are interested in the military as an alternative after high school, please pay attention to the information coming out, about our military week, the week of 11/6. Another alternative opportunity after high school is to go directly into a career and or trade. So we will have a career trades expo on March 7th at Stevenson High School. It's a ways away, but mark your calendar, because that can be a really good information source in terms of seeing different careers that you might want to enter directly after high school. There will be a number of programs that come to this expo, so we really encourage you to be a part of that if it's something you're interested in. We also have Miss Travis, who is our career resource specialist, here with us at Stevenson High School. You can find her on the College and Career Center page of the website, and she's available to talk to about your interest in possibly going directly into a career or trade post high school. Another opportunity after high school is a gap year. This is becoming more and more common for students, and I actually had a couple of students myself last year who decided to take a gap year. And what a gap year is a year of an opportunity, to travel, work, or study abroad in order to gain experience and knowledge before you commit to a college or university. Again, in my experience, I've seen it to be quite useful and valuable for the students that I've had on my caseload. But we will have more information about that upcoming. We'll have a gap year fair at New Trier on a Saturday in January. That date will be announced soon, but we just mark your calendars for that if you are interested in a gap year post high school. So in terms of our post-secondary educational system, this is generally how it works. Once you graduate from high school, you have the choice of either going to a community college, also known as a 2-year college, or a junior college, or going to a 4-year college or university where you would get your bachelor's degree. So those are the two gold circles. A community college there are two different programs within a community college, and one is a certificate program and the other is an associate degree. Now, a certificate program is more targeted to a particular field and prepares a student for a certain career or area of expertise, whereas an associate's degree is helpful if a student wants to transfer credits to a 4-year bachelor degree. And what I mean by that is oftentimes it can be a really cost-efficient way to get some credits before you then transfer to a 4-year university. If you go to a community college for 2 years and then transfer to a 4-year university, it's done all the time. So in a 4-year university, oftentimes you're going to take what we call general education courses for the first year or two of your schooling. Those general education courses are similar to how Stevenson asks students to take what we call graduation requirements, right, in core academic classes. Many colleges, four-year colleges, will have that same requirement. Now, at a community college, you can take those same general education courses at a fraction of the price that they would be at a four-year college or university. Therefore, some students choose to start at a community college, earn an associate's degree by taking those general education courses for the first year or two, and then take those credits and transfer to a four-year university where they can then focus on their major courses, major area of study, and it will have saved them a good deal of money. So people often choose this option. Again, it's an associate's degree, which you then transfer those credits to a four-year college or university. So beyond a four-year university, the gray circles are really just indicators of the post-undergrad degrees that are available: master's degrees, professional degrees, and doctorates. So as you get ready to apply to a four-year university, if that is your path, you're going to want to talk to your counselor. Your school counselor will have a good wealth of information in terms of the general college application process. The other really good source of information is going to be the undergraduate admissions website for that particular school. So you can find out a lot of information about how to apply, what they need in your application. You can find out information about the school, demographics, things like that, just going to that undergraduate admissions website. We like to tell students that that is really your best, most accurate, up-to-date info source about a particular school. And then go into the CCC on Facebook and or on Instagram and like the CCC. That way you'll get important updates and information. Also Naviance, and we'll talk a little bit more about Naviance in coming slides, but Naviance is a great resource for you all as you look to schools and what they offer, different programs. They can compare and contrast schools if you're looking for certain geographic regions or a size of school. It can really help you filter those things out to make good decisions about where you think you want to apply. And then our last resource is something called PATES, and I'm actually one of the counselors who is in charge of our PATES group. It stands for Patriots Applying to School. It's intended for those students whose parents did not attend school, undergraduate education in the United States or at all, and therefore don't have the same kind of support at home that other students might have. So we try to help in a smaller group with that application process, given the lack of resources and support at home that students might have. So if anyone is interested in becoming part of our PATES group, it's offered during the lunch periods and before school. Please let your counselor know and we can get you invited to our group. We have 3 more this semester, and we look forward to welcoming anyone who thinks it would be an appropriate placement for them. Again, Naviance is where you're going to find the calendar of college representative visits. We do have representatives coming in to talk about their schools and answer questions, so you can find that calendar of visits located in Naviance. And if you are not sure how to go about that, there was an email from the College and Career Center that went out the first week of school. So if you can access that email, it will give you explicit instructions on how to sign up for a college rep visit. And you please do remember that you do need to sign up in Naviance before you come to that visit, and you need to do it at least 2 school days in advance. And also please note that you do need to get permission from your teacher from the class that you'll be missing in order to attend that rep visit. Back to Naviance, just an explanation of what Naviance can be a resource for you. In terms of, it can help you research college and admissions data, like I said, demographics and geographic region and size, so much information you can find out about particular schools. It's also a way that you can try to kind of keep yourself organized by recording your applications and your admission decisions. So in terms of applications, There are a couple different ways to apply to college. You can apply through a college's website often, or that college's website might direct you to Common App. Now, Common App is a portal in which hundreds and hundreds of colleges are housed. And that way you can go on Common App and you can apply to a number of different schools through one portal. So more likely than not, the schools you're applying to are on Common App. So if they're not, you can apply through the college's website individually. What I will say though is if a college does have more than one way to apply, because some schools will allow you to apply either through their website or through Common App, please only choose one way to apply. It gets confusing for the schools if you're applying, if you have two different applications in the queue. So, and this is the website for Common App. It's www.commonapp.org. So again, in terms of how to apply, you're going to check the college's website to see what the application process is. You want to make sure you're tracking your usernames and passwords and your application status and your deadlines. One thing is if you don't have a checklist or a organizational tool, we're going to put one in the chat right now that will help you stay organized, but it is important that you have some sort of organizational tool to keep this all in check for yourself. You're also going to want to distinguish between early decision, early action, and regular decision. And just a quick overview, although I'm sure you've already talked about this with your college counselors when they came to visit you in your classes. Early decision is that binding decision. Remember, you can only choose one school as early decision. And what early decision means is that you are saying to the school, I am applying. If you accept me, I will withdraw all of my other applications immediately and I will attend your school. So only one that you can apply to via this decision plan, and you need to be ready to commit to that school when they accept you. Now, different from early decision is early action, which is not binding. Early action really just means it's an earlier deadline and you will find out earlier about your application status. Now, early action generally is a November 1st deadline. It can be October 15th, but those deadlines are few and far between. Most schools' early action deadline is going to be November 1st or November 15th. So if you can get your things together by then, I highly recommend that you apply using this decision plan. Oftentimes, it can also increase your likelihood of being accepted if you do apply early action versus regular decision. And regular decision is generally around that January 1st deadline, although it can be earlier, maybe January 15th. So just pay attention to deadlines. Make sure you know when your application has to be in. And make sure you are making sure that all the people who are supporting you in your application process, like counselors, like teachers, know what your deadlines are. We'll talk more about that in a few slides. So counselors came into your activity period a while back and talked to you about transcripts. We talked about how to access your transcript in Infinite Campus and how to check it over to make sure that it is accurate, because counselors likely have already submitted your transcript to Common App. So whatever is on there is generally what has been submitted. You can check with your counselor to see if he or she has already submitted, but likely at this point, your counselor will have already submitted your transcript to Common App. And again, we'll talk more about that process, about how transcripts get submitted to schools and to Common App in a few slides. So schools will ask for a few different methods of seeing your grades. So some schools may ask you to self-report your grades. Illinois happens to be one of these schools, UIUC that is, asks you to self-report. So if you're asked to self-report your grades, my recommendation is that you download and print your transcript that you get off of IC, and that you very meticulously check the grade and input it on the computer. Make sure that you have it done accurately, because you don't want them to see your final transcript in June, which they will, and see that something was reported inaccurately. That could be a problem. So that's if you're asked to self-report. If you are applying through Common App, your counselor will submit your transcript, which is what I was just talking about on the slide before this. So if it's Common App, your counselor will send it in, and you don't have to worry about it. If you are applying through a school's individual website, likely you will be using Parchment.com. And what Parchment is a document delivery service that we use here at Stevenson in order for you to get that transcript sent over to the school that you're requesting it sent to. So that process is one where you go on Parchment, you enter the school you want to send it to, you enter that you are a Stevenson High School student, and then that request comes to our registrar and it gets sent to the school. It can take a few days, so be sure you don't wait to the last minute if you are using Parchment. And this is just a quick visual about how transcripts get submitted to college. If you're asking to self-report, you don't need to send a transcript anywhere. You just need to make sure you enter everything accurately. If you're using Common App, you do not need to do anything because your counselor is going to submit your transcript for you. And if you're not using Common App and you're not self-reporting, you are going to likely be using Parchment to have your transcript sent. So in Common App, in order for your counselor to be able to send your transcript to the portal, there are a couple things you need to do. You need to go to Recommender in Common App and the FERPA page, and we recommend you waive your rights of access so that your counselor can have access to send your transcript. And you're going to need to invite your counselor to be a recommender. I'm going to show you what that looks like on the next slide. And let me explain what it means to waive your rights of access. And I think, again, the college counselors have talked about this, and I think that school counselors talked about this during activity period a while back. But waiving rights of access, so checking FERPA, just means that you are giving up your rights to see any information your counselor sends to Common App before it goes to Common App. So basically, if your counselor writes you a letter of recommendation, you're waiving your right to see that letter of recommendation before it goes. So we recommend waiving rights of access so that you can then invite your counselor to send the information that you need uploaded to Common App. So again, this is what it looks like. Once you check FERPA and you've waived your rights of access, you're going to go down here to where it says counselor and invite counselor. And then you're going to make sure that you put the counselor's email address in spelled correctly. Then your counselor will receive an email saying that you invited them, and they will know what they need to do. Make sure that all your deadlines are in, and by deadlines I mean you've put the correct decision plan for each school you intend to apply to. That way your counselor will have the information about when they need to have their materials submitted by. Going back to self-reporting, again, you're going to access your transcript in Infinite Campus, and this was included in the activity period for seniors on how to do that. And then you're going to enter your grades yourself. You will all have to send a final transcript via Parchment in June. So whether you don't have any schools that you need to do this now and everything's through Common App now, you will be sending a final transcript. Everyone will be sending a final transcript to the schools that they choose to attend, that one school they choose to attend. However, counselors will go through that with you in groups in April or May, so you don't need to worry about that now. We will show you how to send your final transcript via Parchment later in the year. Just a couple things about transcripts. Make sure that you are looking at it and it is correct. GPA waivers are included. One thing to note is that your transcript does not just have the grades from your first 6 semesters of Stevenson. It will also have your current senior year courses listed, so those courses that are in progress, and that includes second semester courses. Those will be listed as well. So make sure that is accurate. If you do make any changes to your senior year schedule, you need to make sure that you get in touch with the schools that you are applying to, because likely your transcript will have the old classes on there and you don't want it to look different from what it looks like at the end of the year when you send your transcript to them. So what you will do is send an email to your schools and tell them about the change after you've applied. In terms of teacher letters of recommendation, you do need to be sure to invite and assign your teachers for their letters of recommendation to be uploaded to your Common App. So, different from the counselor, when you invite your counselor, you're going to be inviting your counselor to all of your schools, every school that you have applied to on Common App. And when you ask them to write a letter of recommendation, same thing. You can ask your counselor to write a letter of recommendation for one school, and it will assign them for all the schools. However, for teacher letters of recommendation, you do need to go into the individual schools and invite and assign them to each school separately. So please remember that. Terms of recommendation letters, whether they're from a counselor or a teacher, please make sure that you do, in fact, need the recommendation letter. If it is required, absolutely ask. If it's not required, please be cognizant of the fact that teachers and counselors write a number of recommendation letters, and if it's not a required letter, please don't ask them, because they are really pushed to the limit in terms of the number of recommendations they need to write. Also, please ask with 3 weeks notice, no later than mid-September if possible. Depending on your deadline, that might be different. And remember, the teachers can say no. They can say no if they've reached the maximum number of letters that they are able to write. So ask early and have a backup plan. The other thing that I think is important for students to know is that you do not need to wait for your counselor to submit your materials before you submit your materials. As you get things, go ahead and send them in. If you have a test score that you know you want to send it now. That can take a week or two to get processed and sent from ACT or College Board. We'll talk more about that later, but do not wait. Schools will collect one thing at a time and they will put it all together. When they have everything, they will then look at your application. And also adhere to the minimum. I want to go back to that. If a college asks for 1 or 2, 1 is absolutely sufficient in terms of recommendation letter. And this is just a general overview of the teacher letter versus the counselor letter. The counselor letter is more an overview of your both academic and personal journey throughout high school, whereas your teacher's letter is really more about your academic functioning. The brag sheet is our electronic form, and it is located in a couple of different places. I'm going to go through it with you in a slide or two, and then same with the teacher reflection form. They are located on our website for you to easily download and or print. So the CCC, you can go to the recommendation letter links through the CCC page, or you can also, and I think maybe even more easily, go through student life forms and documents, and both of those are housed in that section of the website. So again, the Stevenson website, student life, forms and documents. And then if you scroll down, you can find both of these forms. In terms of steps for the recommendation letter for your counselor, you want to complete your electronic brag sheet thoughtfully and thoroughly. Please put everything on there that you are wanting your counselor to share with schools, anything that makes you unique and different as a student and or person. You also want to make sure that you're inviting your counselor as a recommender within your application. And we talked about that with Common App. You want to make sure that you've done that so that your counselor knows it's there. We don't see that you're on Common App if you haven't recommended us. We don't know that there's anything due if you haven't, invited us and or recommend and as a recommender. And then you also want to schedule an appointment with your counselor at least 3 weeks prior to your deadline so that that counselor can go over your brag sheet with you. So we get the brag sheet, and then we also want to talk to you about it, make sure we understand all your deadlines and what you want for us to highlight and things like that. So be sure you do make an appointment with your counselor. And again, at least 3 weeks prior to your deadline. Even more is appreciated. I mentioned this before, but just a reiteration, be sure all your application deadlines are entered within Common App, and that means that you put in the decision plan for each school. A few tips on essays. Most importantly, answer the essay question. So I always tell my students that once you've written your essay, read it and then go back and look at the question again and look and see if you actually answered the direct question they asked. It's really important. They're looking for you to answer the actual question they asked. Optional essays are not optional. So different than recommendation letters where they say 1 or 2 and we're saying adhere to the minimum, optional essays means write them. So an optional essay, absolutely, you're going to write that extra essay, okay? A lot of schools also have an essay saying why whatever school, why us? And you definitely want to let them know that you know about their school. So anything you can do to do some research, whether it means going to their website and looking at programs that interest you or extracurricular activities that are unique to that school, or whether you've been on the campus and there's something you can talk about in your visit to the campus. These schools want to know that you want them specifically. So anything you can do to demonstrate genuine interest in that particular school will be helpful. And also, in terms of essays, if there was a problem, this is your chance to explain it, to talk about what the struggle was. So if there was a problem in high school academically that shows in your transcript, this is your time to talk about it in your essay. Resources for essays. So our college counselors do make some time for essay read appointments, so you can look into that. There are drop-in Tuesdays for you to have them take a quick look at your essays as well. English teachers can be a good resource, your counselor can be a good resource, but really important is not to use too many sources to help you, because at the end of the day, your essay is a subjective piece of writing. It's your story, and you don't want to confuse the subject with too many opinions. So really, like 1 or 2 people taking a look at your essay is probably more than sufficient. Test scores. So test optional is now something that's becoming more common with schools. Some schools have gone back to requiring test scores after the pandemic. Some are allowing test optional for a few more years, and some have gone indefinitely test optional. So check the admissions website for the test requirements at the schools you are applying to. If you are submitting official scores, you can do that now at www.act.org if you took the ACT, or www.collegeboard.org if you took the SAT. If you have a score that you know you want to send, go ahead and do it now. There's no need to wait. It can take some time, and we don't want you to get pinched with a deadline because you didn't do it in time. So like I said, it can take a couple weeks. And so go ahead and order them now if you know you have a score that you want to submit. So for test optional schools, we do want to highlight that the transcript is still your best indicator of whether you're going to be a good a good candidate for that school. Schools are still going to consider that the most relevant variable in your application. So it's not just the grades, it's the rigor of the courses you've taken, it's the grades that you got in those classes, it's the trajectory and the growth in terms of of what they've seen over your 4-year journey. So that's going to continue to be the most important thing. The other thing that I think is important to highlight is that test optional students are compared to test optional students, and they are not compared to another student who has submitted a test score. It's apples and oranges, and the apples are compared to the apples, and the oranges are compared to the oranges. So that's something that has been important to continue to reiterate to students, and I want to make sure you understand that. If you are wondering whether you should or should not send a test score, the general rule is that if your score is at or above the 50 percentile of accepted candidates, you would send it. If it's below that, you would not send it. That is our general rule. And again, if you're not sure, talk to your counselor or one of our college counselors. These are just some general deadlines. October 15th is our internal deadline. Very few schools have an October 15th actual deadline. Most of them, the earliest would be November 1st or November 15th. But October 15th is our internal deadline. It's the deadline we want you to have everything done for any early action school so that, like we said, you don't get caught in any tech glitches. Again, just be careful. Make sure that deadlines, you know your deadlines, and make sure that you apply well in advance of them. We've had students who have submitted on October 31st and there was a tech glitch and their application did not get there and they therefore were not considered for an early action deadline. So you don't want that to be you. In terms of FAFSA, FAFSA stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, in case you didn't know. We do have a financial aid information session that was recorded on 9/27. It's available on the CCC page for more information about the FAFSA and financial aid in general. It is a graduation requirement, filling out the FAFSA or filling out the opt-out form. So more information on that to come. We also will have a financial aid completion night in January. So in general, and I'm going to move to the next slide. In general, the FAFSA opens on October 1st each year. This year, due to some significant changes in the program, it won't open till sometime in December. And as I was saying before, we will have a financial aid, a FAFSA completion night in January of this school year. More information to come in December. So in terms of what you can do to help yourself in this post-secondary application process, you can connect with schools virtually. Remember that electronic doesn't mean instantaneous. So again, adhere to deadlines. Make sure you get in front of deadlines and ask questions. Use your counselors. Your counselors are there to help you in the larger application process, and we want to make sure that you have all your questions answered. Access all the resources that are there for you on the CCC page as well, because likely any question you have can be answered right there, okay? And more than anything, we just want you to enjoy your senior year. This is a time to enjoy all of the things that senior year can be about outside of the post-secondary search and application process, and anything we can do to be helpful, we want to do. So thank you for your time. I hope you all enjoy your evening, and we look forward to seeing you soon.